The jungler has a lot of different responsibilities, but number one among all of them has got to be ganking. Today, you're going to be learning some tips to make more of your ganks successful. This means you're going to be burning more flashes and getting more kills in more of your games. Follow these tips and I guarantee you're going to see an increase in the amount of kills you get early on into the game, and you're going to be able to snowball so much easier. So make sure you crush that like button and head over to our website, GameLeap.com. Right now on our website, we're running our 50% off summer sale. We're also going to be releasing 100 new videos this week on our website, so do not miss out. Now, what's the first thing to make sure that your jungler can get some successful ganks? Because remember, the more times you're able to empower your jungler and give them a successful ganking opportunity in your lane, the more likely they're going to want to continue ganking for you. As somebody who plays jungle a lot, I cannot tell you how frustrating it is to gank somebody's lane and then your gank was completely unsuccessful when it should have worked. It makes me completely lose faith in that player and not want to return to their lane at all for a repeat gank. So how are we going to make sure that we're not doing this, that our jungler never loses faith in us and absolutely adores us, comes back for gank after gank after gank? The first thing we need to be doing is making sure that we track enemy wards and get pink wards of our own. This tells our jungler what is and is not an option for gank routes. If you see your laner walk out of the lane and into the river, it's safe to assume that they used their ward somewhere. You don't have to see them ward in order to assume that there is a ward somewhere. If they left their lane and did something in the river, make sure you let your jungler know because there's probably a ward in the river somewhere. This means that you could also probably avoid that ward and still get a successful gank off. Just because the lane is warded does not mean the jungler cannot gank that lane. If you're playing in a side lane and they ward the river, then a lot of the time their jungler can path around through the tri-brush and then still get a successful gank off. They could also just sweep the ward and wait a little bit longer till the enemy thinks it's safe. If you can figure out exactly where the ward is. But the main priority here is just letting them know that there is a ward. There's nothing worse as a jungler than sitting in a brush waiting for a gank and then figuring out that the brush was warded the whole time and you just wasted 10 to 15 seconds. Moving further from this point, if you know that your lane is warded, then you can use pink wards to help clear that vision. Typically, this is what you want to use a pink ward for early on into the game. You want to use it to, first of all, get vision in a brush permanently, but second of all, disable vision from the enemy laner. Wards are a really long cooldown early on into the game, so if you use a pink ward to disable a ward and kill it, that means that you have an opportunity where the enemy just can't get vision in the river or elsewhere. This makes your lane absolutely tantalizing for your jungler. I cannot describe how awesome it is to see a pink warded lane that I can just run through and I know for sure that I'm not walking on vision. Playing with a lane that's just absolutely dominating the vision game feels amazing as a jungler, and it's also going to make sure that your jungler's ganks are going to be a lot more successful. All right, next up, let's talk about consistent posturing. Even if the enemy laner does not have vision of your jungler, it doesn't always mean that they're in a position to be ganked. Sometimes you can even scare them away by playing too aggressively. For this reason, we want to make sure that we are posturing consistently in the lane phase even when our jungler is not there. If I'm playing against somebody who's playing very, very defensively and then suddenly they go aggressive, that is definitely going to sketch me out in the laning phase. I can easily tell in lower elos when I'm being ganked because the enemy laner will just randomly start playing hyper aggressive for no reason. So an example would be if your jungler is waiting in your brush to gank and they want to initiate the gank when the enemy laner goes for the next cannon minion. If you start playing super aggressive and try to zone them from that cannon minion, they might get a whiff that something is fishy. This will be even worse if you haven't been zoning from any cannons up until this point. If you've been playing a certain way the entire game, don't change the way that you're playing just because the jungler is there. Wait for the enemy to walk up and make a mistake before you initiate the gank. They're going to do it eventually. If you start playing differently, way too aggressive and up in their face, then they're going to think something is up and they're going to play a lot more passive. It's going to be a lot harder to gank them. This also rings true when you're playing against something and you're being very aggressive for the whole game, and then you start playing defensively further back, trying to get them to walk up. Just consistently play with the same levels of aggression throughout your laning phase. This will make it impossible for the enemy laner to know when they're being ganked and when they're not, which does two things. First of all, it makes your chances of getting a successful gank much higher, but on the other hand, it also makes it so the enemy laner cannot know when they can play aggressive and when they can't. It will force the enemy laner to assume the jungler is always there if they don't have vision, and this is an absolutely terrifying thing to be assuming. Now, not every elo is going to play as though the jungler exists and is constantly in their lane, but at the very least, you can prevent yourself from scaring the enemy laner off. Next up, we want to make sure that we're timing summoners and large cooldowns. If you're playing against something like Malphite, for example, he only has 2 escapes, his ultimate and his flash. This means if you're playing against Malphite in the top lane and he uses his ultimate and then flashes after you, he's not going to have either of these cooldowns. This is information you absolutely need to communicate to your jungler. Now, you don't need the exact timer for Malphite's ultimate. Yes, you can look it up on a wiki in order to see what the exact cooldown is, and then you can let them know what that cooldown is, but usually it's okay to just have a general feel for when the guy's ultimate is going to be coming back up. You don't need the exact time for ultimates. Summoner spells, on the other hand, you should be able to get the exact time on. You can just hover over the summoner spell and see what that cooldown is, do some basic math to figure out when it's going to be coming back up. Typically, when somebody flashes, you're going to have 5 minutes to abuse the fact that they have no flash. This is something you need to let your jungler know. They've got the next 5 minutes to abuse your laner not having flash. If you don't let them know that they flashed, then how's the jungler supposed to know that they're vulnerable? A lot of the time, as a jungler, I don't want to risk a gank on risky lanes, for example, Darius or Tryndamere, because I know that those lanes could turn the fight and fight me 1v2. But if all of a sudden I know that these champions don't have their ultimate off cooldown, they don't have flash, they don't have ghost, then suddenly this is a great window to gank that champion and shut them down. I'm always going to assume that these champions always have their full kit and summoners to be able to outplay the gank. So if this is a possibility, I'm not going to go for that gank. This is why communicating all information to your jungler is very, very important. I would even go so far as typing out to your jungler, hey, they won't have ultimate for the next 60 seconds or so. If you come top, it's a guaranteed kill. Remember that as a jungler, I cannot be watching every single lane for the entirety of the game at the same time. I can only get snippets of info here and there. The rest is on you to communicate to me. That's right, even challenger junglers cannot be watching every single lane at once. Yes, I'm going to pick up a lot of additional information that other junglers would not pick up, but that doesn't mean that I am completely omniscient and I know everything that's going on in the game. I do need some help from you guys. My decision making and knowledge of how the dynamic of the lane is also not going to be perfect. I won't be watching every trade, so I won't know if you need help in this lane or if we can pull a gank off every single time. Yes, I'm going to have a general feel for things just based on how things are going, but sometimes unlucky occurrences happen. Sometimes you lose a fight that you should have won due to a misplay on your part. This is why communication is so key. If you messed up a trade early on into the game and you died because of it, that's going to make me as a jungler a little bit wary of ganking you. But if you're open and honest and say, hey, I messed up, but this is a good opportunity to shut him down, then yeah, I'm all for it. Even if you didn't mess up early, sometimes you can bait your jungler into ganking for you by just saying this. Oh, I messed up early, but it's a really good opportunity to gank him. Right? You don't always need to tell your solo queue teammates the truth. If you think the right play is something, then sometimes you want to bait your own teammates into making that play. Do not use this tactic though in order to get a gank for a failing lane or a risky gank, because this if it goes poorly, is probably just going to tilt your jungler, right? So you need to make sure that you're playing the mental side of things as well as the physical game itself. Now, last up, the final way that you can get more successful ganks from your jungler is a bit of a dishonest tactic, but it is something that I like to do from time to time, especially when I'm playing against friends. This is the fact that you can type to the enemy laner and try to get them to type back to you in order to initiate a gank. For example, someone who will frequently respond to my typing is Adrian Riven. Sometimes when I play against Adrian, I'll just try and type to him, make basic conversation to try and get him to type back while my jungler is top. Now, I really hope he's not watching this video because it's just really awkward if he hasn't found out that I do this, and then he finds out from this video, because he might get angry and stop typing to me, and I honestly do like him. He's a cool guy, right? But he's hard to lane against. Sometimes I need jungle pressure. So since I know some things about Adrian, for example, he likes playing fighting games, I might casually mention, hey, have you tried X new fighting game yet? To try and get him to type back to me while my jungler's top. Now again, some people consider this a dishonest tactic, but if you're all into that strategic warfare or mental warfare, then this might be one of the tactics that you try to employ in your next game. Honestly, it's something that I do in normals or customs a lot more than I do in ranked itself. A lot of the time, if I do it in ranked, people just don't like it. They'll just hate me for doing it. In fact, there are a lot of players who end up doing this exact thing. One of the famous ones in NA is Bdeed. This guy tries to get everyone to type as much as possible. Anytime anything happens, he will type, I am Bdeed. As a result, in games that he's in NA, it's become kind of a meme to just type, I am Bdeed, or I am bad, or type something in all chat anytime it happens. And when you're typing, you cannot play. It honestly does end up working out for him because a lot of time he'll type I am Bdeed really quickly, and then the enemy will start typing back to him, and boom, he'll engage on them, he'll do something, he'll get a kill from it. This is something that I will almost never suggest to you guys. Most of the time, I do recommend that you just don't type at all. But it can help your jungler get more successful ganks off in your lane, especially if the enemy laner decides they want to type a lot. If you guys want to have as good of a jungler as possible in your next game, make sure you hit that like and subscribe button. I know you're probably skeptical, thinking, well, how could liking this video help me get a better jungler? But hey, never hurts to try it out, right? If you haven't already, head over to our website, GameLeap.com, where you can get your GameLeap premium membership 50% off. We're running our summer sale right now, so this is a limited time offer. Remember, we're going to be posting 100 new videos this week over on our website, and it's definitely something you don't want to miss out on. As always, I'm Panther. I hope you learned something valuable, and I'll see you in the next one.